You already track a planet. You have done it your whole life, once a year, usually with cake. Your birthday is not really about you. It is a report on the Earth. Every year, our planet finishes one full lap around the sun and arrives back at the exact place it stood the day you were born, and we mark that lap with candles. That is all a year is. One orbit. The whole calendar, every date you have ever written down, is built on a single planet, completing a circle. You have been celebrating a planetary cycle your entire life. You just called it a birthday. Here's the part almost nobody stops to think about. Every other planet is doing the exact same thing. Each one leaves a spot, travels its orbit, and comes home. The only difference between them is how long the lap takes, and that is not magic. It is physics. How far the planet sits from the sun, how fast it moves, and the stretched, elliptical shape of its path. Mercury, close and quick, finishes its lap in 88 days. The Earth takes a year. Saturn needs about 29.5 years to come home. Neptune, far out in the cold, takes 165. Different clocks, the same simple motion. And cycles are not something astrology invented. They are the native language of nature. Day into night, season into season. The tide out and the tide back in. Your own heartbeat, your own breath. The sky is only the largest clock we can see, and every hand on it turns at its own speed. So when an astrologer says a planet is making its return, they mean the plainest thing in the world. A planet, back where it started. Exactly like your birthday. The only question worth asking is which planet and how long its year really is. And the return is not the only moment that counts, because a cycle turns as it travels. It does not just leave and come back. The start is the conjunction, the planet on its home spot, a seed going into the ground. A quarter of the way around comes the square, the first real friction, where whatever you started meets resistance and has to fight for it. Halfway around is the opposition, the planet on the far side of the wheel, staring back at where it began, and that is the peak, the culmination, the moment a thing finally comes to a head. Then it closes the circle and returns. Seed, friction, harvest, return. You have already lived the halfway point without naming it. When Uranus, the 84-year planet, reaches the far side of your chart around age 42, directly opposite where it stood the day you were born, that is the classic midlife crisis, landing almost exactly on the halfway mark of its cycle in you. And there is one more turning point, the loudest of them all. When a slow planet crosses out of one sign and into the next, the whole theme changes, the way one chapter ends and another opens on the same page. Hold on to that, because in a few minutes, 3 of those planets are going to change signs at once, over a country you know well. Start with Saturn, because its lap is long enough to matter. Almost 30 years to come home, and 30 years is long enough to remake a person. There is an age when a life tends to come apart, and then rebuild into something that finally holds. It arrives around 29. Not for some people. For almost everyone. Careers end. Marriages start, or fall apart. The person you were pretending to be quietly dies, and the person you actually are takes the wheel. Astrology named this and dated it centuries before psychology called it the quarter-life crisis. It is your first Saturn return. Saturn, back on the exact spot it held the day you were born, the same way the Earth comes back for your birthday, except Saturn only manages it once every 29.5 years. So it does not mark a year of your life. It remakes a chapter of it. Most people feel it as pressure. The scaffolding you borrowed from your parents in your 20s gets tested, and whatever cannot carry weight comes down. Plenty of people use it to finally get serious, get sober, get married, get out. But there is a darker edge to this crossing, and pop culture has a name for it without knowing why. The 27 Club, Hendrix, Joplin, Morrison, Cobain, Winehouse, a haunting number of brilliant, burning people who did not survive the run-up to their first Saturn return. The late 20s are when the bill for how you have been living comes due, and Saturn does not take excuses. That is the first return. The second one, near 58, is the return nobody warns you about, and it can be the making of a person. Louise Hay, who built one of the largest self-help publishing houses in the world, did not find her real work until her late 50s. She wrote the book that made her and founded her company right on her second Saturn return. She is the clean proof that a return is not an ending. It is a reckoning, and a reckoning can be a beginning. Whatever you have been building quietly for 30 years, the second return is where it becomes real or gets released. Hold on to that idea that a return is a real, datable event, because here is where it gets big. The same machinery that runs in your chart runs over a country. A nation has a birth chart too, cast for the moment it was born. The slow planets return to it on the same kind of schedule, except a nation's slowest clocks do not run in decades. They run in centuries. Take the fastest of the truly slow planets, Uranus, the planet of revolt, rupture, and sudden change. It circles the wheel in about 84 years. When the United States was born, on July 4, 1776, Uranus sat at 8 degrees of Gemini, and the country was at war for its independence. Watch it work. It leaves, it circles the whole wheel, and about 84 years later, it comes home. 1861. Uranus back at 9 degrees of Gemini, and the nation splits in half into civil war. It leaves, circles again, returns again. 1943. Uranus at 5 degrees of Gemini, and America is deep inside the Second World War. 1776, 1861, 1943. The same planet, the same sign, spaced about 84 years apart, and every single time the country is fighting over what it is. So where is Uranus now? In 2025, it entered Gemini for the first time since the 40s, and it lands back on the exact founding degree around 2028. The 84-year clock has come around a fourth time. I am not going to tell you a war is coming, because slow planets do not work that way, and I will show you why before we finish. But the clock is real, the dates are computed, and the hand is resting on the same number it hit the last 3 times the country was tested. And Uranus is not arriving alone. In 2022, Pluto returned to the exact degree it held in 1776, 27 degrees of Capricorn, crossing that spot 3 times across the year. A Pluto return. A nation gets one about every 248 years, and no empire before America, not Rome, not Britain, came through it unchanged. Then Pluto entered Aquarius, where it had not been since the era of the Constitution and the French Revolution. And Neptune entered Aries, where it had not been since the Civil War and Reconstruction. So right now, over America, you have the Revolution's Pluto, the Civil War's Neptune, and the war clock's Uranus, all returning inside the same 2 or 3 years. The sky of 1776 and the sky of 1861 back together. If it feels like the country is fighting about its own founding again, about what it is and who belongs, the chart is not surprised. And it is not just one planet over one country. Watch a pair worldwide. Saturn is structure, Pluto is pressure, and when they meet, a structure runs into a force it cannot absorb and breaks to be rebuilt. 1914, the First World War shatters the old order of Europe. 1947, The Cold War draws its lines, and a subcontinent is cut into India and Pakistan. 1982, the deepest recession since the 30s. 2020, weeks before a pandemic closed the world. 4 meetings, 4 completely different events, 1 repeating theme. A structure hits a pressure it cannot hold and gives way to a rebuild. The planet never hands you the event. It hands you the theme, and history writes a fresh version every time. Now, a cycle that reaches into your ordinary life, and almost nobody outside astrology has heard of it. The moon's nodes, the 2 points where the moon's path crosses the sun's, swing backward around the wheel and return to their starting place every 18.6 years. Computed, that is 1988, then 2007, then 2026. And look what keeps time with it. Real estate. Property has boomed and crashed on a roughly 18-year rhythm for as long as we have records, land peaking around 73, 90, and 2006, with the 2008 crash landing right on schedule. Economists even have a name for it, the 18-year land cycle, and they almost never mention that it keeps time with the moon. And the same nodes come back in your own chart, near 19, 37, and 56, often the exact years your direction resets. One cycle, running on a scale you can buy a house on, and a scale you can feel in your own life. Now, the cycle nobody in my field wants to touch, and it is the one that touches where you live. Climate. Here is the strange part. Astrology is a discipline built on a single idea that everything moves in cycles and nothing in the sky runs in a straight line. And yet, the moment the subject is the climate, a field obsessed with cycles goes silent. So forget astrology for a minute. Let me point at 3 cycles that are not astrology at all. They are measured with instruments. First, the ocean. There is a roughly 60-year swing sitting right in the global temperature record. Warm from about 1900 to the 40s, cooler from the 40s to the 70s. Warm again from the 70s into the 2000s. A 60-year wave riding on top of the longer trend, and it happens to keep time with the 60-year beat of Jupiter and Saturn. That one is peer-reviewed and published, read from the thermometers, not from a chart. Second, the sun. Between 1645 and 1715, the sun nearly stopped making sunspots, a stretch we call the Maunder minimum. It lines up with the coldest teeth of the Little Ice Age, when the Thames in London froze thick enough to hold fairs on the ice. A quiet sun, a cold earth, centuries before the first smokestack. That one is read from ice cores and tree rings. Third, the tides. That same 18.6-year lunar node physically drags on the oceans, and a NASA-led study in 2021 found it will push a jump in coastal flooding in the mid-2030s. The establishment funds the study of an 18-year lunar flooding cycle and then acts astonished when the flooding arrives in cycles. Now, let me put the astrology back and keep it in its lane. Neptune, the planet of oceans and water, takes about 165 years to circle the wheel, and it has made almost exactly 1 full turn since the Civil War. 1 complete revolution of the slowest hand on the clock since the last time this country tore itself in half. I am not going to hang the temperature on Neptune. 1 turn is 1 turn, and 1 turn proves nothing on its own. But that is the whole point. A field built entirely on cycles, standing in front of a temperature record with real measured cycles sitting right inside it, should be the first in the room to ask which cycle and where we are standing in it. On the ocean, on the sun, and on the tides. That is not the fringe position. It is the measured one. All I am asking is that you look. And if any of this feels fringe, it is the opposite. It is one of the oldest ideas we ever wrote down. Scripture keeps its time on a single number, 7. The week rests on the 7th day. The land rests every 7th year. Count 7 of those rests, 7 times 7, and the year that follows is the Jubilee, when debts are forgiven and the land returns to the family that lost it. Pharaoh dreams in sevens too, 7 fat years and 7 lean, and Joseph reads the dream as a cycle and plans a nation around it. And when the book of Daniel measures out the future, it counts in 70 sevens, 70 weeks of years, an appointed clock laid out in sevens. A cycle built out of cycles, all the way down. And Ecclesiastes says it as plainly as it has ever been said. The thing that has been is the thing that shall be, and there is no new thing under the sun. That is this whole video, in one line, written 3,000 years ago. The sky as a clock is right there too. In Genesis, the lights of heaven are set for signs and for seasons. Job asks whether you can bring out the Mazzaroth, the old name for the band of the zodiac, in its season. And when a king is born in the Gospel of Matthew, it is the Magi, astrologers, who read it in a star and cross a desert to find him. Reading time in the sky is not a modern novelty. It is written into the founding documents of the civilization now arguing about it. Now the part that keeps this out of the fortune-telling bin, because this is exactly where cycle talk falls apart. First, the timing is loose. These are the slowest bodies in the sky, so they mark windows measured in years, not squares on a calendar. Anyone selling you a to-the-day call from a planet this slow is selling a certainty the method cannot support. Second, this is a pattern, not a cause. Uranus does not start wars. History moves in rhythms, and these returns run alongside the turning points. The correlation you can see. A lever you can pull, no. History rhymes. It does not take orders. Third, a theme can arrive quietly. The same return that lands as a war in one century can land as a cold, grinding argument in the next. Same theme, different volume. There is one more place these rhythms show up, and it is the one people chase hardest: markets. And a market does not run on one cycle. It runs on a stack of them, layered on top of each other. There is a short inventory cycle of about 4 years, a business cycle of roughly 7 to 11, a building cycle near 20, the 18-year land cycle you already met tonight, and the long wave, the one Kondratiev named, that rolls through in 50 or 60 years and carries whole technologies up and back down with it. Short cycles turning inside long ones, all at the same time, which is exactly what you have been watching all along. A Saturn return turning inside your longer life. A war cycle turning inside the slow tide of a nation. The same architecture every single time. Cycles inside cycles, whether you are reading a person, a country, or a market. How those market cycles stack, where they line up, and where the whole arrangement is pointing now, is a story with its own rules and its own traps, and it is a video all its own. That is where we go next. And if you follow that road far enough, past the plain cycles, there is a deeper geometry waiting. A way of squaring price against time to hunt for the exact turn that a rare few have given their whole lives to. That is a story for another day, and only if there is appetite for it. For tonight, just know the floor goes much deeper than any one video can reach. So here is the door, and it opens both ways. The chart you learn to read on yourself reads the world just as well, and the world reads back into you. Your Saturn return is coming on a date you can name. Uranus is back in Gemini for the first time in 84 years. Pluto has returned to the degree of the founding. The nodes are closing a cycle you can feel in the price of a house. When is your next one? Your own chart settles it in about a minute. A birth chart is a mirror for reflection, not a prophecy. It shows you the shape of the water you are standing in. It does not tell you the ending. Now go read your own.